Yo, what's going on, Kicks Army? I'll be showing you guys how to draw the Air Jordan 7 step by step. And after the drawing is done, I'm going to go ahead and doing the colorway Nothing But Net. After I do the step-by-step process of teaching you guys how to draw the Jordan sneaker, I'm going to be giving some art tips and drawing tips, all around tips. And don't forget, if you guys enjoy these daily sneaker drawing videos, make sure you guys hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and bounce past the bell to get post notifications. Every Sunday is a new how to draw video, and every Saturday I post a poll letting you guys know what sneaker could be for Sunday's video. Make sure you go ahead and vote. And one last quick plug, if you guys like this stencil but you don't want to actually draw it, you just want to go ahead and color it, I have all my stencils available on my website, kickstarter.com. When I say all my stencils, it's not one stencil, it's not 20 stencils, there's over 200 stencils available for free on my website, kickstarter.com. The best part is, if there's a stencil that you want to see added to the website that's not already on the website, you can send your request through the contact tab at the top of the page. And with all that being said, let's get it! You guys are ready? Before we start the drawing, we're going to make our guideline set so that way the shoe will be proportionally correct. This, we're going to draw two squares right next to each other. You can use either a ruler or just kind of freehand, just make two squares. Afterward, we're going to divide those two squares into top and bottom halves. We're going to add two vertical lines. One's going to be on that bottom right hand quadrant and the other one's going to be on that initial left square. Finally, we're going to add one more horizontal line going over the two bottom quadrants, and this will give us all the guidelines we need to draw out the rest of the sneaker. I'm going to go ahead and start working on the silhouette first, then I'll flesh out all the details inside, but you guys really want to make sure that you look at where I place my lines in relation to where we place the guidelines. It should make doing this entire drawing much easier. You're going to notice for the tongue and the top part of the upper, it extends past that top horizontal line that we have. Now that the silhouette is done, we're going to start working on the outsole. For this initial line, notice how we dip underneath that last horizontal line that we made. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to add these spiked sections on the heel and towards the forefoot. Then we're going to start separating the outsole from the midsole. You'll see how in those two spike sections, the outsole actually kind of rises up and it goes down almost like a mini mountain. Again, with all these lines, really look at where I have them placed in relation to where the guidelines are. Stay within each box. So for that spike section towards the front, notice how it doesn't go above that last horizontal line. And it starts to flesh out more of the outsole by adding those circles inside of those pods. Now we can go ahead and start working on the upper. For this first section, know how it makes like a weird M kind of shape, but it stays underneath the center line. And we're going to start working on that tab that wraps around the heel and the ankle liner. Notice how that part reaches all the way to the bottom crosshairs of the initial left box. And we're going to add that panel that goes behind the section that we just made. Then we're going to add a few more lines that go within that top ankle area. Again, look at how all these lines are working together. Notice how some of them are flowing with each other. And we're going to add that final section that really connects the front and the heel. Then we're going to go ahead and start working on all the laces. And then once the laces are done, we're going to touch up the top of the tongue, and that is it. The drawing is already done. The next stage of the drawing is the inking stage. After that, it's the coloring stage. As I've mentioned many times before, the markers that I'm using are micron markers. They're the markers that I prefer the best. Although I've heard that Faber-Castell also makes some pretty good black outlining markers that I might try again soon. Regardless of all of that, if you're not really looking to spend a lot of money on markers, but you do want some basic markers, Sharpie actually makes a very good fine point marker. They're called ultra fine points, and obviously they're thinner than traditional Sharpie markers. Those are the markers that I was using for a lot of my initial drawings before I ever made the channel. Trust me, they work just fine, and they're a lot better to use than the traditional Sharpie markers that are just too thick in my opinion when it comes to outlining. Now, one of the major disadvantages I have when I do these videos, especially the how to draw videos, is the outlining. Because I cannot rotate the paper when I'm filming because I need to kind of have it straight, it makes it very difficult to get super clean lines. You might be thinking, Kickstarter, what the heck are you talking about? These lines look just fine. And that may be true, but at least in my mind, when I make these lines, when I'm up close to the paper and I see everything in very close detail, I can see that in certain spots there are certain inconsistencies. Ideally, when you're doing your drawings, you want these lines to be as crisp as possible. What I mean by that is you don't want certain sections to be way thicker than others. If you want your outlining to be clean, all of the lines should be relatively the same thickness. Which is why, if you've worked on the drawing stage to make sure that your shoe is proportionally correct and that everything is in the right spot, the inking stage should be much easier because you're not having to think, okay, where should these lines go? You know, is this going to be weird? Is it going to be not smooth? All this other good stuff. The easier that the drawing stage is, the easier that the inking stage will also be. And in the initial drawing stage, I'm not worried about adding any of the extra details, such as stitching and stuff like that, because I know that's going to be added later on in the inking stage. However, let me give you guys a quick warning. Let's say you're going to use markers as opposed to color pencils or whatever, right? If you're going to do a shoe that's not black, okay, if it has any kind of color for the upper that's not black, you want to make sure that you do your inking at the very end on top of whatever color that you have. Because more than likely you're going to be doing those fine details in black, I presume. And you're going to see that if you go ahead and you do it in black and then you go with marker on top of it, there's a very good chance that the marker color you use could smear the black outline that you put. This isn't as big of a problem when it comes to like the sections that we've made, but when it comes to the extra fine details such as the stitching and stuff like that, it can really be a big inhibitance. I don't even know if inhibitance is a word, but I'm using it in this context because I think it works, at least, I don't know. And you're gonna see that in this particular drawing. Sometimes when I go in at the very end with like the yellow, maybe even the blue, and I go over some of those stitching details, it smears the stitching a little bit and it causes a little bit of a dark effect because now that black ink is being spread in more than one spot than it was originally intended to. Now in my cases, for the most part, because I know that's going to happen ahead of time, even though I try to go ahead and remember to put the stitching in at the end, sometimes I forget, and I understand that even if I have the stitching on the paper already and I'm going to go over it with like a yellow or something, I'm not going to have it to the point where it's going to mess up the drawing by going over it. The way around this is that if you have the stitching, literally just color around the stitching. That way you're not having to worry about smearing it. It is super annoying to deal with after the fact. The best thing you can do is just to remember to do it last, but listen guys, sometimes it happens. That's what happened in this drawing and it's okay. You don't want to have to throw out an entire drawing just for a little bit of stitching, you know what I mean? Usually when I have all the line work done, when I'm satisfied, I'll go ahead and I'll erase the extra marks that we've made. Only because that doesn't need to be on the paper and it looks better when it's not on there anyway. Speaking of paper, if you guys are using markers like I prefer to use, if you're using colored pencils, it doesn't really matter as much, but especially if you're using markers, do not, and I repeat, do not use copy paper. If you don't know what copy paper is, that is the traditional paper that you use for your printer whenever you're printing out documents or stuff like that, papers or whatever. That paper is the thinnest paper that you're going to find, and because it is so thin, it cannot absorb that much ink at all. Can handle the printer ink just fine because the printer is only printing one layer of paper, but have you ever tried printing like a full color photo on a regular sheet of copy paper? It gets very thin, very flimsy, especially in the middle where all that ink is on. So imagine you're putting multiple layers of ink with higher quality markers like Copics or Prismacolors or whatever. It's not going to be able to work. It's not going to blend it easily. You may feel like, oh my god, what am I doing? Why is this not working? Do I suck at blending? No, you do not suck at blending. It's just that the paper can't handle your greatness. That's all it is. What that means is that you actually have to use sketch paper, you know, mixed media paper, watercolor paper, anything else that's a lot thicker than traditional copy paper. Luckily, when you go to like an art supply store or just kind of any arts and crafts section, most of the time the paper they have in those sections will be thicker than copy paper. The very popular brand that I buy a lot of my stuff from is called Canson. If you go to Michael's or Hobby Lobby, they have a bunch of different stuff over there, and they have a lot of different types of paper, in which case when you open up the initial flap, it'll give you like a guide showing you if you use this kind of medium, what kind of paper should you buy. Now I mention this because they have a kind of paper specifically for markers, right? They call it marker paper. It's like a purple cover and everything like that. I recommend not using that for markers. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Besides the fact that that paper is also pretty thin, it's not as thin as copy paper, but I mean, it's pretty thin. It doesn't really work too well when it comes in terms of blending. At least for me, when I feel that kind of paper, it's almost like it feels a little bit glossy. And when it has that kind of texture, when you're trying to blend two colors together, it's almost like water and oil. It doesn't really work too well. I don't know why they advertise that as marker paper. Maybe I'm just using it wrong or whatever, but trust me guys, do not spend your money on that particular kind of paper if you're using markers. I recommend sketch paper. Mixed media paper is pretty good. At the moment, I'm using watercolor paper that I find really good because it's super thick, and I feel like it's able to absorb the ink way better than all the other kind of papers I've been using, so I might stay with this, although I'm more than happy to experiment. That's another thing too, you guys gotta experiment. Don't get me wrong, I understand when money's tight, you're not experimenting with anything. You just want to go ahead and buy whatever you got. Trust me, I get it. But if you have the luxury, especially if you have the money to go ahead and kind of mess around with different art supplies, I encourage you to do it because you'll be surprised on what things could be working better than others. And ready for this? Here's another life hack. If you have things that you know that you want to buy but you're not too sure of, look at reviews. Go on YouTube, see what people say about it. Look at Amazon reviews. Just look at what the internet has said about that product. Somebody else has purchased that before you, so it's safe to say that if there's something that you're not sure of, you want to kind of see what a comparison would be like between this kind of paper and this kind of paper, or this kind of marker and this kind of marker, look it up. The internet will tell you the truth. Not necessarily on everything, but in terms of how supplies work or how a product works, the internet is pretty much spot on with stuff like this. Thinking one of these days I might actually buy a ton of supplies that are all different and kind of do a video showing you guys the differences between all of them and how they work. Let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think of that. But that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and bounce past the bell to get post notifications. Don't forget to visit Kickstarter.com for all your sneaker stencil needs. Check out the over 280 videos on the channel. You guys already know that I'm uploading daily videos. By the way, I have a full playlist of how to draw videos, so if you guys like this kind of content, make sure you check out the playlist. I'll link it at the end of the video, but with all that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow. Yay!